Hi guys, Mike with Killer Bee Garage. Now when I say guys, I mean boys, girls, cats, dogs. I'm not a very woke person, so you'll be all right. Rub some dirt on it. I didn't get a lot done this week. It seemed like every time I started something, something held me up. Either it was life or I needed another part, a different part. But those things happen, and it's a project vehicle. When you have a project vehicle, you just gotta kind of chill out, man. It can sit another day. You'll be all right. It's not like you're working on your daily driver where you're under the gun. So that makes the hobby fun, where you can just kind of, okay, I gotta wait for another part. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. But I did get some things done. I'll show you. I put my new oil filter canister on. That's a really sharp looking part. Dipstick tube. And this coil holds a special place in my heart. This is a coil off of my GTO, actually. A few years back, I had a Pertronix pointless distributor on it, conversion, and I used that flamethrower 2 coil on my GTO. I have since put a HEI distributor on the GTO, so I just had that laying around, so I kind of transplanted that. And I just out of some scrap I had laying around, I fabbed up a little battery hold down. That's kind of sort of it as far as the engine goes there. One thing that I was kind of hee-hawing around about was taking out the distributor and the oil pump. When you're not too sure about things, sometimes you find a way to kind of postpone it, but I had to do it. So I took the distributor out and the oil pump. And that kind of goes along with the rest of the story here. This is the timing chain cover. Now, before I pulled out the oil pump, I was getting conflicting advice on what I had here. 1947 is when they changed over from chain drive timing to gear drive timing. So I thought, okay, well, it's gear drive then. I was also told that if you have a single vertical concave, whatever you want to call it here, that is also a sign of gear drive. If it's a chain drive, you would have another rib like this here. But this little dimple here had me concerned because that is a sign of the chain tensioner on the other side. So why would you have that dimple there if it's gear drive? So I knew I needed to wait until I pulled out that oil pump to know what I had for sure. Because the chain timing oil pump and the gear timing oil pump are a little different. The gear that's on the top of the oil pump that connects to the camshaft, that interacts with the camshaft, is different for the chain and the gear drive. So I knew as soon as I dropped that oil pump, I would know what I had. And I did drop the oil pump, and sure enough, it's a chain drive oil pump, just with the direction of the gears. So it's like, okay. I'm going to pull that timing cover off then, because chain stretch, right? This is a 77-year-old vehicle. Even though it looked like somebody's been in this thing before with the way that the distributor cap was, and then when I took the timing cover off, I could tell that the gaskets weren't original. So somebody else has been in this thing. So I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took that all apart. I was hemming and hawing about buying a new oil pump. The gear on the oil pump that meshes with the camshaft looked fine. The thing that kind of bothered me was the slot where the tab of the distributor fits in. Okay, this sits in your engine, and then on the other end, your oil pump has a slot that this tab fits into. That slot was worn. It was worn a little bit too much for me. So I hem and hawed about spending that money. I finally just pulled the trigger. I just don't think it was going to work the way it should. So there you have it. I had to order an oil pump. Then I take the timing cover off, and number one, I see that it's not the stock gaskets. You can just tell it's not. The other thing that bothered me was, and I swear to the baby Jesus, that I have this engine on top dead center on the number one cylinder on the compression stroke. I did that before I took off the timing cover. Okay, and this is what I found. Now I've highlighted these marks. There's a mark on the cam gear and a mark on the timing gear. And I highlighted them with yellow, just easier for me to see. These two marks right now this mark should be down here. These two marks should be together so that it's easy to see that they're lined up. Okay, they need to be lined up. For whatever reason, the last guy that was in here thought the timing mark should be up here. The only other possible thing I could do is pull the head off and make sure that everything's the way it should be as far as top dead center goes. I'm confident it's on top dead center. I'm not pulling that head off. So what I'm going to do is, and it didn't skip teeth. Okay, this is too perfect. This is too perfect for it to skip a couple teeth. It would be different if the timing mark on the on the camshaft gear was like here. Okay, it skipped a couple teeth. But no, that's too perfect. But when I do put it back together, I'm going to spin the gear, not the camshaft. Leave that alone. I'm going to spin the gear so that the marks are together down here so I can be absolute positive for sure that they are lined up. Also, I don't know what the deflection rate is supposed to be on this chain, but that seems a little excessive to me. So I'm thinking that had to be replaced anyway. That was just going to cause problems. So I just got my chain today from KaiserWillys.com. So that would be my next step. I am getting a Felpro gasket set. Found that on Rock Auto. It was the least expensive place I could find for a gasket set, and it's Felpro. I mean, it's what everybody else has. So that should be coming tomorrow, I believe. So I'll be doing that, putting the new chain on, turning that gear, putting the cover back on, and then my new oil pump should be here in a few days too. So hopefully it won't be too much longer and things will start coming together here. One thing that I like, one bonus, I like to be a positive person. You can find good in everything. I like that this engine is a Go Devil engine, flathead, Go Devil engine with the chain timing. So it's just one more thing me and the little fella have in common. Because my wife calls me Go Devil. Sometimes, I'll say, I'm going to go out to the other garage for a little while. And she knows that probably means like 4 or 5 hours. So when I say I'm going out to the other garage for a little while, she'll say, "You go, devil!" And so now we got something more in common. It's kind of cool. And you know what? I tell her, you know where I am. It keeps me out of the strip clubs because strip clubs are expensive. And then things happen, and then jail's expensive. So actually, I'm saving her money. Son of a bitch. So everybody wins. Everybody wins, and that's the important part. Other thing I did this week was I had the radiator repaired, the original radiator. I was going back and forth about putting a new radiator in. You can get a 3-core aluminum radiator off of eBay for like $140. Okay. Reason why I wanted to see if the original could be repaired is that it has its original shroud, which does help with cooling. The aluminum radiators weren't going to have a shroud on them unless I wanted to go with an electric fan, which I have electric fans on the GTO and they work really good. But I don't know if I'm willing to pull that trigger yet on the Willys. So I brought the radiator in. Now this is a guy, here we go, old man stories, who cares? This is a guy that I've known most of my life. I have been able to legally drive for 43 years. Okay, and I remember bringing stuff to this guy back then. Because high school, you buy junk. Okay, here we go, more old man. We're going even further with the old man stories. Back when I was in high school, you bought cars like this for $500. You pounded the crap out of them, you took them to the junkyard, and you bought another one for $500. Okay, that's why there's not a lot of those around anymore. But I remember bringing radiators, and he worked on gas tanks at the time too, stuff like that to him, 43 years ago. And come to find out, he's been in business. It's Green Bay Welding. They're on the corner of Monroe and Maine in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And he's been the radiator guy, and the shop is super cool. They've been in business since 1919. And I don't think they've changed anything. It's an old brick building with painted lettering on the side of the brick. Super cool old building. His grandpa started the business, then his dad, and now it's him. And he said he's the last generation because you can buy new radiators for so cheap now. There's just not enough people fixing stuff anymore. So he figures that he's the last generation, and I gotta tell you, he's pretty close. He was looking kind of old, and I'm sure I look older than I was at 16 too. So, but I dropped it off. I said, "Hey, just take a look at this. Tell me what you think." So he calls me back in a few days. He says, "Oh yeah, come get your radiator. It's fixed." I'm like, I didn't really want it fixed necessarily. I didn't tell him this, but I didn't really want it fixed necessarily. I just wanted to take a look at it, let me know in my mind if it's worth just buying new. But he fixed it, and it's like, I'm not one to, the guy's been around forever, man. I'm not going to dicker about anything. So he says, "Yeah, $50 and we'll call it even." I'm like, $50, hey man. So I went down a couple days ago and picked it up. This booger here was there. And he said, "You know what? It's not impeding anything. If I start messing with that, I'm going to make it worse than it is. And then we may not be able to fix it. So just leave well enough alone." I'm like, yeah, cool. I mean, I like taking advice from guys that have been doing something their whole life. So that's good enough for me. He did have to solder up around the water neck here. And he said the rest of it tested out pretty good. He did. Little old school here. He gave me his coffee cup filled with this powder that I'm sure is, giving off, things that they would outlaw in California. But he says, don't use any kind of liquid on it. As far as a stop leak, if you do happen to get a stop or a leak, he says, put this in a little bit of coolant, dump it in the radiator. It'll take care of all your problems. So he just gave me a coffee cup full of that. So, I mean, that's, right? That's old school. So, like I say, nice old guy. I'm happy. He's happy. I'm going to go ahead and, paint that probably this weekend, and it'll be ready to be installed. So that's kind of all I wanted to go over for today. You'll see there is a pile of electrical parts right there, but we're not going to go over that today. So this next week, if all goes well, I'll have that timing chain on, distributor oil pump. What else do I want to promise? Then I have to start on the electrical side of the engine as far as getting it ready to turn over. Once I get my oil hoses, I want to fill it back up with oil too. And then work on turning it over. After that, after I get some oil back in the engine, I want to adjust those valves. So there's stuff to do. And before I leave, a little bit of dad advice. This isn't for the old guys that know everything. This is for the younger guys. One of my favorite sayings is, gratitude turns what we have into enough. And everybody goes through hard times and ups and downs, and they have to deal with a little less and a little more sometimes. But try to remember to be grateful for what you have, and gratitude turns what we have into enough. So probably be talking to you next week. Until then, have an awesome week, and see you guys later.